Hey everybody. All right, so we're going to go ahead and rig up the water rudder to the air rudder. Um, I've added the cross wire cross bracing to the forward pair and the rear pair of struts as per 90% of the reference illustrations I have float mounting for light sport aircraft. They would have that X bracing again between the two crossbars horizontally, and then between each pair of struts, the forward pair vertical cross bracing, and the rearmost trailing brace struts has X bracing there. So I've gone ahead and replicated that load. Also, for the rigging on the light sport aircraft, in most seaplanes they use what's called a pull-pull system, which means whichever way you turn this rudder, um, whichever way you turn the airplane in the air rudder, that causes a pulling effect. So wire wire has to be strung from each side of the rudder control horn. So the control horn is the bar that passes through the rudder and is attached to both the rudder pedals, and in a case of a seaplane, it's also attached to the pull-pull system for manipulating the water rudder. So the bar will pass through the rudder. It'll be connected on each end to a pulley, and both pulleys. Let's see, on the rudder side. On the rudder side, you locate a pulley approximately here, and then down here on the float deck. Then they pass through, and this will be cut down to maybe about an eighth of an inch or thinner. So a small eyelet here, just glued flat to the deck, and then the line passes through that and connects to another bar, and in this case I'm going to use a T-pin for this bar, and so that'll be planted directly in the center of the float here and drop down to about this height, and that, when it's pulled from either side, rotates the rudder once it's snapped down into its vertical position, back snapped down into the water. This becomes the axle on which it rotates. So that'll be planted directly in the center of the rudder, about an eighth inch from the end of the rudder, sticking up about this high, maybe a little lower. And then the starboard side line, the line connected to this side of this T-bar, comes back through another pulley, a different pulley here, is routed across the pair of floats over to a point around here, and then up to the fuselage here and back to the control horn here, so that no matter which way the rudder is manipulated, it creates a pull force to the water rudder, to whichever side it's being pulled. And that's the pull-pull system. And it just comes down to how it's strung. Now I've decided, I used the ends of guitar strings on the 1/16th scale seaplane that I built, the Stinson Reliant, and they were perfect for that scale. This is 1/18th, actually 1 to 17.5 inches is the exact scale. And for that, the guitar string ends, the round ends of the guitar strings were just too big to my eye. So I'm going to use the heads of these pins. I'm just going to cut off about at a 1/4 inch, bury most of that into the fuselage or into the float, and leave just about this much protruding. And then I'll wrap the line around one wrap around each of these pins, to replicate the pulley rigging, and probably just put a dab of a black paint just on the ends, kind of to replicate the center of a pulley wheel. And that should convince the eye enough, I think. And it's to the right scale, so it should be okay. So the next step is, we figured out our rigging. So if this is our rudder, and this is a rudimentary drawing, if this is the rudder of the airplane and this is its control horn, the line coming off of the starboard end will go, as I said, along the fuselage, down to the float, across the crossbar, and back to the starboard side of the water rudder, and then the port side, again to the side of the fuselage, a pulley here, down to the float deck behind the forward strut here, and then straight back and out to the port side control horn for the water rudder, which is here. So these are the two floats. This is the fuselage in the middle here, and these are the lines, and the X's mark the spots, approximate location of the pulleys. So it's mapped out. I know exactly what it's supposed to look like before I put any holes in the fuselage or in the float deck. So I want to make sure I know how I'm routing it and how many pulleys we need. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pulleys required. We have our T-bar here. That's the top of the T-pin. And we'll have our small loop of tubing right about here. And that just collects the two lines into one spot, and then from there they go out and up to the T-bar. Here's my tubing. All right, so that's how we're going to go. We're going to make 5 pulleys, and we're going to put a control horn through the water rudder. Mount our T-pin here as a control horn for the water rudder, air rudder, water rudder, and then we'll rig our system. We'll rig our water control system, water rudder control. Okay, that's the breakdown of how it's going to go, and in a minute I'll make another recording of just how that goes later.